20 Indian lives have been lost just in the past 2 weeks in Jammu and Kashmir. The targeted killings in the Kashmir Valley have a Pakistan ISI imprint all over. Now remember, Pakistan appears to be rather relaxed after Taliban's takeover of Kabul. But Terroristan is in top gear at the line of control and in Jammu and Kashmir. There is fear in the valley. The bloody 2 weeks have triggered an exodus of migrants from Jammu and Kashmir. The question now is, what is the price of these 20 Indian lives? Will Pakistan be made to pay?
Days after selectively targeting the Hindu-Sikh minorities in Kashmir, now Pakistan-backed terrorists are killing poor migrant laborers in a planned strategy to spread fear against non-locals. On Sunday, terrorists in Kulgam barged into an accommodation of migrant laborers from Bihar, shooting 2 to death, leaving 1 critically injured. This comes after a spate of civilian killings in last 2 weeks, with over 10 civilians, mainly non-Kashmiris, who have been killed. Fear of further attacks has led to exodus of thousands of laborers from the Kashmir Valley. Scared, desperate to save their life, ruining the loss of livelihood.
क्या काम करते थे, अब क्यों जाना पड़ रहा है?
गोलगप्पे बेचते थे हम, इसलिए वो साथ वाले हम मर रहे थे, इसलिए हम घर जा रहे हैं।
रूम में तो मत है, सुरक्षा दल तो अपने जगह जगह पे है, यहाँ रूम में घुस के मार रहा है, इसी के वजह जा रहा है आदमी सब।
कश्मीर में कहाँ अभी काम कर रहे थे?
पूरा हुक्म में हम लोग ईंट भट्टे में काम कर रहे थे। वहाँ का मालिक हमको इतना मार मार के पूरा सीजन भर काम करवाया और हमको ना पैसे नहीं दिया, मार के भगा दिया वहाँ से 12 बजे रात को।
You can see that they have packed their bags and arrived here in Jammu. These were the scenes that were witnessed in 1990 when an entire community of Kashmiri Pandits had to leave their homes due to the threats that were issued by the terrorists, due to the killings that were carried out by the terrorists.
Jaish-linked terror group United Liberation Front has claimed responsibility for the gruesome murders, also warning migrants of more attacks and threatening them to leave. Police has been responding with swift action, launching a massive crackdown, detaining hundreds of suspects for alleged links with the terror groups. Joint operations by the Indian Army, the CRPF and the Jammu Kashmir Police had neutralized at least 13 terrorists with 9 encounters in 9 days. To review the security situation, Home Minister Amit Shah called a marathon meeting with police chiefs of all states. Director General of the CRPF and NIA is in the Kashmir Valley presently, monitoring intelligence inputs. Ex gratia relief of 1 lakh rupees has been announced by District Administration Anantnag, while Bihar Chief Minister Nitish Kumar announced 2 lakh rupees each to the kin of both victims and also asked the centre to assist Bihar residents in Kashmir.
कुछ लोग जानबूझ करके बाहर से जो लोग काम करने के लिए वहां पर पहुंचे हुए हैं, उनके साथ कुछ हो रहा है और हम लोग इस बात को लेकर के एकदम वहां भी अलर्ट कर रहे हैं कि देख लिया जाए कि लोग तो जाने के लिए स्वतंत्र है।
Meanwhile, a political face-off has erupted on the recent killings.
आज वक्त आ गया है कि भाजपा सरकार को, गृह मंत्री को, जो ये हमले बढ़ रहे हैं, इस पे अब जवाब देना चाहिए कि नोटबंदी, आर्टिकल 370 का क्या नतीजा ये बढ़ता आतंकवाद है।
Modi government has already cracked down heavily on the Pakistani-sponsored terrorism, and we will keep on continuing hitting hard to the backbones of the Pakistani terrorists.
Is the situation on ground the rerun of horror of the 1990s, but that in the Naya Kashmir?
For scores of migrant laborers who head back home, leaving Kashmir Valley, it's a tough choice but a clear one. They have chosen life over livelihood. For now, they head back home only to say they will return once things are normal. But despite added security measures, many of them who are staying back live with a sense of insecurity and a sense of fear. With camera person Sanjeev, this is Kamaljeet Sandhu in Srinagar for India Today.
Now, killing minorities is a Pakistan ISI template for a pan-Islamist caliphate. It's been used in Afghanistan. In Afghanistan, of course, it's been used through the Taliban. In Jammu and Kashmir, it's being used through Lashkar-e-Taiba, Jaish-e-Mohammed, Hizbul Mujahideen, or the new avatar of these terrorist organizations, whether they are called the TRF or Harkat 313 or the United Liberation Front. The question is, why are Kashmiris falling into this Pakistan trap, and why, after 2 years of action on Article 370 and after 5 years of demonetization, has this terror-enabling ecosystem not been dismantled? Joining me on the broadcast this evening are Lieutenant General Sanjay Kulkarni, former Director General of Infantry; Syed Zafar Islam is a Bharatiya Janata Party Rajya Sabha MP; Ifra Jan represents the National Conference; Dr. Ajay Kumar represents the Congress; Sushant Sareen is a Senior Fellow at the Observer Research Foundation; Amit Raina is a Kashmiri rights activist. But my first question is to Syed Zafar Islam. Sir, you're a Rajya Sabha MP. Your party had claimed 2 years ago that after Article 370 goes, after 5 years after demonetization, we are still having 20 Indians killed in the valley in 2 weeks, 11 civilians, 9 soldiers. Sir, where is the policy going wrong? Where is action in Kashmir going wrong?
Well, Gaurav, if you just ignore the last few days, whatever has happened, situation in Kashmir has really been very good. Normalcy has more or less returned to the valley. The tourists from all over the country and even from outside have been coming to Kashmir. The militancy had come off almost by 59% in 2021 and 20, and till July it has come off significantly in this year as well. So the situation is becoming normal there, was becoming normal, but barring this incident, what you just mentioned last few days, which has happened, at the instance of Pakistan, ISI, and the terrorists or the jihadis or Kashmiris who are being radicalized by Pakistan and ISI, they are living in valley. They're in small numbers, but they are the one who created this problem.
Sir, why haven't you been able to neutralize them? You have a big army, you have a big police presence in that area. But on the political front, let me get Dr. Ajay Kumar to respond. Dr. Ajay Kumar, government says terror is on its last legs. You heard what Syed Zafar Islam had to say. Security forces say that terrorists are now desperate and they're targeting the weakest link, which is the civilians, the rehdiwalas. Would you buy that argument?
Look, Gaurav, I definitely believe that the challenges in Kashmir are huge. But what scares me is when the BJP spokesperson, when Zafarji comes on the national TV and says things are normal. I mean, I'm ready to say that, look, the challenges for terrorism is not, a quick fix solution. Kashmir has been a huge challenge for many years, and every government has faced it. But the issue is the ostrich-like attitude of the Bharatiya Janata Party saying things are normal. You're back to 1990. You're back to those targeted people. The fact is that they are attacking people they attacked a Kashmiri Pandit, they attacked a Dalit neighbor, they attacked a Sikh, and they continue to attack it. So the fact is that the terrorists are working towards their awful agenda. The political leadership across the spectrum, whether it is the NC, whether it's Mehboobaji, whether it's the Congress or everybody else. I have not heard the BJP on this issue. Maybe they have spoken. I stand corrected and apologize if I've misread the newspapers. But the fact is that everybody has been condemning it in the strongest words. Everybody has to get together and work together to ensure that the intent, because the
you're saying don't have an ostrich-like attitude. I completely respect that point. But Ifra Jan, this clearly is not Kashmiriyat. The systematic targeting of Kashmiri Pandits, a Sikh school principal, a Kashmiri Hindu teacher, laborers from Bihar, a taxi union president from the valley itself. Is this a systematic attempt to wipe out Hindus and Sikhs and nationalist Muslims from Kashmir by Pakistan's ISI? And why is the valley silent on this, ma'am?
Absolutely, Gaurav. The valley is not silent on it at all. In fact, after the abrogation, we've hardly seen any protests in Jammu and Kashmir. But after Bindroji's gruesome killing, I would say, we did see so many mainstream political parties coming out openly condemning the incident. We saw candlelight protests, we saw vigils from the civil society, we even saw masjids openly sending out messages of peace and saying that this is unacceptable. We even had Mirwais, the most senior, quote-unquote, holy spiritual head of Jammu and Kashmir, visit those families, making a very clear political statement. But I would disagree with you, Gaurav, when you say that this is a recent spike in the killing in Jammu and Kashmir. It's not recent at all. If you look at it, it's been happening right after the abrogation in September. This is how it started, September 2019, when Amit Mehra was killed, when Rakesh Pandita was killed. It was last year. And interestingly, this year itself, until Mr. Bindro's killings hit the headlines all around the media, we had 22 civilians who had been shot dead. Unfortunately, those 22 Kashmiri Muslim civilian killings did not make it to the headlines. And Bharatiya Janata Party kept going on with its normalcy, Naya Kashmir narrative. And we also saw that there is a slight difference how, the pattern of the militancy is emerging. We now see...
Ma'am, it's not militancy, it's terrorism. We must get the nomenclature right, and I completely appreciate your point about Kashmiri nationalist Kashmiri Muslims being targeted by Pakistan ISI because they don't suit ISI's agenda and that pan-Islamic state that Pakistan wants to establish from Afghanistan to Kashmir. But General Kulkarni, the security forces have been battling Pakistan terror for more than 3 decades in Jammu and Kashmir. And yet Pakistan manages to stay a step ahead despite your surgical strike, despite Balakot airstrike. Where have the forces failed and why have the forces failed to destroy these terrorists and the terror enabling ecosystem?
Gaurav, what really happens is we can keep killing the militants. There is not a problem. Any number of militants can be killed. But what is more difficult is to kill this militant ideology. And the militants only survive when they find local support. However much sympathy or lip sympathy may be given, until and unless this local support to the militant dies, it is not possible to kill militancy, number one. Number two, we've had political leaders say that they are not Kashmiris for doing it. All the more reason why the Kashmiris themselves cannot come forward to be able to ensure and get these people surrendered. The part-time militants who are involved in target killing should be able to surrender. The locals must assist. Third, look at the number of percentage. If you see the number of Hindus or the non-Kashmiris which have been killed, the percentage is about 0.1. And the ones who are Kashmiri Muslims who have been killed, who are being seen as absolutely pro-India, their percentage is 0.000001%. And the number of militant Hindus, the Kashmiris that have died now, are over 0.1%. Over 99% of the population is of one community. There is no reason why the locals cannot assist the security forces, because human intelligence alone will ensure that the militants are killed. The
terrorist ideology. General, I completely appreciate your point, but the fact remains, we know the theory. Where is the practical in terms of eliminating these terrorists and the terror-enabling ecosystem? Sushant Sareen, the enemy is not just Pakistan. I mean, Pakistan is in turmoil at this point of time. There's a fight between Imran Khan and General Bajwa. Their economy is in a shambles. There's trouble on the AFPAC border. Sushant Sareen, is the problem closer home, the enemy within this terror-enabling ecosystem that remains strong, sir?
Okay, so Gaurav, I think it's important that I address some of the things which have been said earlier before I come to your question. First, please don't compare it with 1990. I think that comparison is odious. There could be certain elements of what happened in 1990s and you see them being repeated, and they're not being repeated for the first time. And history did not start on August 5, 2019. Even in 2018, there were these kind of target killings even earlier. So don't conflate it with Article 370 and all of that. This is part of the terrorist strategy, and it's been happening over the last 30 years on and off. But it's not 1990. I think it is very important to be very clear about that, because 1990 was a completely different ballgame. Okay. Secondly, please, Gaurav, I'll take issue with you on this. One surgical strike or one Balakot is no magic bullet. Until and unless you are going to be ready to do it on a regular basis, time and time and time again, and be ready to take certain losses which are naturally going to come your way when you have these kind of strikes, you are not going to get a solution. So please, again, don't do that. Finally, on this locals assisting, I think locals are assisting, which is why you have so many intelligence-based operations which are very successful. But finally, to your question, Gaurav, here is the thing. Pakistan has been in turmoil for the last 75 years.
Yes.
What does not change in Pakistan is its bloody-mindedness and its jihadist ideology and trying to damage India. So no matter what the tussle is going on, no matter the bankruptcy of that economy, no matter whatever else is happening out there, their hatred for Hindus and for India is going to come pouring out, and they will continue this until and unless they get a bloody nose. And this is part and parcel of that particular strategy, which has been adopted for 75 years. Governments may come and governments may go.
Absolutely. Before I bring in Ifra Jan on local support to terror, Amit Raina, government operations, whether it's All Out or the NIA, National Investigation Agency, going after the terror-enabling ecosystem, or the Enforcement Directorate action, has anything so far given the Kashmiri Hindus the confidence that the terror-enabling ecosystem is being dismantled, or are the Pandits, the Hindus, the Sikhs not confident about remaining in Kashmir?
See, the abrogation of Article 370 and 35 was a welcome step, and it was seen as a step towards rehabilitation of Kashmiri Pandits and trying to tackle the menace of jihad in Kashmir. Unfortunately, the menace of jihad in Kashmir was camouflaged as lack of development, and they tried to win hearts of jihadis by offering them development. I wish development was an answer to jihad, and if it was, then we would have not seen the Islamic jihad happening across the developed nations. Now, coming to the other timeline, if you look at before the abrogation of Article 370, you had all the political parties, including the parties which are in friends with the BJP, which includes Sajjad Lone, Altaf Bukhari, Mehbooba, Farooq Abdullah, all of them threatened with dire consequences in case you abrogate Article 370.
Okay.
And in prelude to abrogation of Article 370, all these political leaders, the separatist leaders, were detained for some months. Now, as and when you started releasing these political leaders, the separatist leaders, including your own allies like Sajjad Lone, you have seen the situation deteriorating in the valley, because that's the situation that suits these stooges of Pakistan, the proxies of Pakistan. And it is time that government of India has a clear strategy on what they want to do in Kashmir and what they want to do with the stooges of Pakistan in Kashmir.
Syed Zafar Islam, does the government have a clear strategy? Because if I take you back to what Union Home Minister Amit Shah say on the floor of the House, he said, and amidst thunderous applause, he said Article 370 was the root of terror in Jammu and Kashmir. It is time for it to go. If it doesn't go today, we can't remove terrorism from Jammu and Kashmir. Sir, if the root of terrorism is gone, why are terrorists still there? Why is the terror-enabling ecosystem still there in Jammu and Kashmir?
Gaurav, you have to understand that the problem of Kashmir is a long outstanding problem. It is happening since 1990, and it is this government which is taking things seriously. And we are eliminating the mindset as well as the terrorist organization who are active, and the terrorists who are active and being supported by ISI, Pakistan, even the locals. We are aggressively targeting them, neutralizing them, and will continue to do that purely because we do not want a small section of the society take hostage to the entire society in the valley. Just take the example before 35A and Article 370 was abrogated. You had stone pelters all across. Do you see stone pelters? Have you been seeing any visitors, tourists visiting Jammu and Kashmir? This time it was difficult for people to get hotel room in so many places in the Srinagar and Kulgam and other places, purely because the normalcy is returning. Yes, I agree with you that something has happened, and Pakistan, because Pakistan knows very well that India is now in a commanding position, unlike in the past where
Sir, are you
India
in a
used to be
commanding
a
position?
soft nation.
Sir, are you in Alok?
Absolutely.
Sir, you say you're in a commanding
Gaurav,
position.
Gaurav,
Can you say that to the families of 9 soldiers and 11 civilians who've been killed, that you're in a commanding position? But okay.
Gaurav, can I come in, please?
Yes, please.
Gaurav, just a second. Let me respond. Let me respond to this. Let me respond. Just 10 seconds.
No, let Dr. Ajay Kumar come in and then I'll come to Amit Rana. Okay, Dr. Ajay Kumar, quickly, sir.
No, 10 seconds. Only 10 seconds.
Okay,
All I'm
okay.
saying that
Syed
we are
Zafar
in a
Islam, 10
commanding
seconds, finish your point,
position,
sir.
Just a second. When you are fighting a battle of this nature, you are bound to lose brave soldiers. And as Raina was rightly saying, that it is a menace for the society, the terrorism. And when you are dealing with this menace, you are bound to lose a few brave soldiers. But eventually, you will succeed. And the government of India knows that we are at the last leg and will eliminate all.
Is it actually the last leg? Because many times in the past, governments have thought it's the last leg. Ajay Kumar wants to come in and respond to you, sir.
Gaurav, look, I think, and I'm again wearing only my limited police hat experience. The fact is, whether it is in Punjab, and even in Kashmir is going on for so long. The Punjab, with Mr. KPS Gill and Ripper and everybody else who turned around, but the actual story of Punjab terrorism turning back was people of Punjab. They started targeting the policemen's families, the extended families, and went on. And then I think and one of the major reasons because the people started fighting back. Now the issue again is when Zafar and everybody else thinks it's just an army solution. There are shelters for the terrorists, no debate on that. But the narrative across rest of India, and one of the previous speakers correctly said that policemen in Kashmir, families of policemen in Kashmir, and all happen to be from minority communities, they are being shot dead for the past 2 years. They don't get the same type of news coverages which we should be giving.
No, they are being lynched on the streets of Kashmir. Sir, on India Today, we cover them. Every Indian, and we cover it. We cover their valor. We cover their valor with great pride.
Gaurav, can you please request the gentleman? I don't interrupt, so I would request him little courtesy because I promise I don't interrupt.
Go on, sir.
And hold. Yeah. So, I'm not saying. See, the fact is.
It is Gaurav who is interrupting.
That the ISS, one side, the ISS and the Pakistani but the issue is that the major challenge, and Sushant Sarin was right, is going on for 30, 40 years. So it's not governments will come and go. But the Bharatiya Janata Party coming on national TV channel, and Zafar ji, sorry to say, saying things are improving. There were a lot of terrorists, there were a lot of tourists going around earlier. I think that's the worst thing you can do.
What action needs to be taken? I get your point and I respect your point on that. But Ifrajan, terrorists survive. They are like fish in water. If locals don't support, terrorism will not survive. So are some in the valley complicit on this radical Islamic terror that Pakistan is trying to spread across this region? In Afghanistan, they've tried that template.
Gaurav, I'll make two.
Ifrajan, in Afghanistan, they've tried that template. Kill minorities. They're killing Hazaras. Taliban is the instrument there. Lashkar-e-Taiba, TRF and all are instruments here. Ifrajan.
You see, Gaurav, this is a question that is right for the security forces. You have to ask to them if there is local support for it. But here is a question I would want to ask you, and I would leave you with this question. Let's suppose if we assume that there is local support to these people, do the policies of the Bharatiya Janata Party, which include converting an entire state into a union territory, rubbing the nose of Kashmiris onto the ground, literally taking away their rights to have
Okay, I'm having a little issue with the audio.
Making their own laws. Yeah, let me respond.
Yes.
Literally taking away their right to have their own local representatives, destroying their economy in a way that we now have 22% unemployment rate in Jammu and Kashmir, which happens to be the highest in India. Do you think en masse arresting people whenever
all that justifies picking up a gun and killing a Golgappe wala? All that justifies killing Makhan Lal?
Gaurav, I said this is problematic. You are putting, Gaurav, you're really putting words into my mouth. I said, would this policy help in mitigating local support, or would these policies help in actually making the people more angry? That is a question.
Stay with me, Syed Zafar Islam. Respond to Ifrajan. Respond to Ifrajan. Because that be the case, why was there terrorism before the abrogation of Article 370? Syed Zafar Islam, respond.
Let me respond. See, as far as our government is concerned, we are not taking away any rights from anyone in the valley. And on the contrary, we are empowering the common Kashmiris who have.
Absolutely
let
not.
me respond to you, Ifra. Let me. It is the poor, the poorest within the community in Valley. They have been completely neglected by the successive government in Jammu and Kashmir. But it is this government, it is our initiative which we are empowering them. All this. We have enough representatives. Don't worry. Slowly you are losing the ground. You know exactly that you are losing the ground in Jammu and Kashmir. And new party will emerge. New people will emerge. New people will emerge who will lead.
We know, sir, you want new parties to
they will
emerge.
lead
We know you are
Kashmir out of this
them.
out of this
We
mess,
know you are
because you
supporting
people
new
will never be
parties.
able
That is
to
for
take
everybody
Kashmir
to
out of
see.
this space, because your intent is bad. When you have the bad intent, you will have the bad consequences as well, and you are facing the consequences of all the bad intent of running the Jammu and Kashmir all along. When you are in power, you never bothered about those ordinary Kashmiris. You were only
We were voted by the people, sir. We were voted by the people. We don't want the Bharatiya Janata Party voting us.
Give me a moment. I want to
comment?
bring in
No,
Sushant
let-
Sareen.
okay,
I want to
so
bring in Sushant Sareen. There was an apprehension, Sushant Sareen, that there would be a spike in terror post-Taliban takeover of Afghanistan.
Gaurav, can I comment?
Were the security forces caught flat-footed? Amit Rai, I'm just coming to you. Let Sushant Sareen respond to the question, were security forces caught flat-footed post-Afghan Taliban takeover of Afghanistan?
Okay, Gaurav, first, I think it's important to shoot down the polemics of Ifra Jan. And frankly, all the questions which she asked, and she always does this, indulge into polemics without coming to the basic issue. All the questions which she asked, when all of those things were there, was there no terrorism in Kashmir? Were people still not, was there not an ecosystem in Kashmir which was supporting terrorists? And that has started way back from the late 80s, all through the 90s, the 2000s, the 2010s. So please give me a break. You want to argue on polemics, we can do that. On Rahul, on Gaurav, your question, here is the thing. I don't think that the impact of Afghanistan is still being felt. I don't think we are seeing the kind of apprehensions which we have of terrorism from being.
Okay.
I'm not seeing that as yet play out. Look, let's be very clear. What are the kind of incidents which have happened over the last few days? I'm not talking about what is happening down south in Mendhar and the Punch area.
Okay.
I'm talking about what's happening in the valley. These are guys who do not seem to be very well trained. They've probably been given a pistol or two. They've been taught how to shoot with a little scared, little cowardly boys who probably piss their pants. They go from the back, shoot an unarmed man, and think they're great mujahids of Islam, which they are not. Okay, now these are guys who probably live with their families. These are not guys who have disappeared. These are guys who are normal, so-called, at least they're abnormal, but they at least live a seemingly normal life. So it becomes a little difficult to get them on your radar screen. And I'm sure the cops and the intelligence agencies would be working double time to get at the root of it.
Okay.
So I think one is that part. The other part, which is more worrisome, is what has happened down south in the Mendhar Punch area. Now, we don't know whether those were trained terrorists or Pakistan Army, which is to say the same thing. We don't know what kind of people were infiltrated from there, but we know that infiltration is going to increase. We know that terrorism is going to spike. And I think that the government and the security agencies need to rethink how they are going to combat this.
Absolutely, because the worst is yet to come. Dr. Ajay Kumar and Mr. Raina, the worst is yet to come. But Ifra Jan had her hand up. Ifra Jan, you wanted to respond. Quickly respond, ma'am, before I bring in Dr. Ajay Kumar and Mr. Raina.
Yeah, all I'm saying that this is not a new speak. If we actually look, there is a new pattern that has emerged of terrorism in Jammu and Kashmir. It's now slowly moving into areas in Srinagar. In Srinagar, there were many areas, for example, Gupka, more. That is the one. Number two, we also see a spate in grenade attacks. Initially there was around 37% increase in grenade attacks, and this has not been happening this month. This has been happening for all 2 years, as long as the Bharatiya Janata Party was claiming normalcy and Naya Kashmir. To the question Mr. Zafar Islam asked about tourism, I would say we have seen an even larger number of tourists visit Jammu and Kashmir, even in 2010, 2008, 2012. So you really don't have the record number of tourists. We have seen so many tourists come to Jammu and Kashmir. The reality
But
remains
that's the
that
hybrid
Bharatiya
game.
Janata Party,
That when tourists come, terrorists back
Gaurav.
off so that people can earn money.
I am
The
saying
moment
this is-
tourist season is over, terrorists come and strike again. That is the evil game that is on. And Syed
Gaurav.
Zafar Islam, whether it's the Lieutenant Governor or the forces on ground, they really need to see through this game
Gaurav.
and hit. Okay, Dr. Ajay Kumar, you come in before I bring in Syed Zafar Islam to respond.
So Gaurav, look, again, not pretending to be an expert, but even the Northern Ireland issue was an ethnic issue. You know, there were Roman Catholics versus the Protestants. Finally, it was a political solution. Irrespective of whatever you will continue to argue and
Absolutely.
think, the biggest hazard with any kind of solution is that intelligence and anti-terrorist action makes the state much stronger in bargaining. But the fact of life is in the end that you need to have a solution which will be, because if this is going to continue, we have umpteen anti-terrorist and
Sir,
terrorist
in
lessons
all your
across.
arguments, in Northern Ireland, there was no Pakistan state-sponsored
One
terror.
sec, one
So
sec. There
let
was
us
Northern
not
Ireland. Can I
discount.
complete?
Let us
Can I
not discount the
again?
real.
One sec. Okay, let me answer that. Let me answer that, sir. Please be ready to listen.
Of course, very happy to listen.
Yeah, okay, so I'll answer that. Northern Ireland had a huge support, and Sushant Sarin and everybody, huge support from Ireland, the mainland of Ireland. So let's not.
But
I'm just
not
giving you
Pakistan
the-
state
Can I
radical
complete, sir?
Islamist terror.
Yeah, can I?
Not
one
radical
sec. Let me-
Islamist terror.
This is
Are
the
you
problem,
downplaying the
Mr.
threat
Rana,
of
you don't let
Pakistan
the other person complete.
state-sponsored terror?
Why would you not? God, yeah, let's have a civil discussion. Let me complete. I'm not saying take every lesson in history and anti-terrorist operation and copycat it. But the fact is that the only answer through guns for a solution and to continuously thinking that the land is more important than the people, I'm saying, and it's a fact that they are have an evil design. There is no debate. Sushant Sarin was absolutely spot on. It's not something which has happened now. Again, spot on. But if it's happened for so long, and if this government continues to say that things are getting normal, my question again is, we need to think differently. And how it is everybody needs to put their brains together. Can only be the police solution or the army solution be the solution?
Jal Kulkarni wants to respond.
I don't think so.
Jal Kulkarni wants
we
to
need
respond because some of the
recognize that.
terminology being used by opposition is the terminology that is also being used by terrorists.
A long time now. Can I come in?
Yes, Jal Kulkarni and Amit then. Jal Kulkarni respond, sir.
Gaurav, let's be very honest about it. This is the mindset, and this mindset led to even Sheikh Abdullah being imprisoned for over 10 years. There is no denying the fact that this mindset exists, and that is the mindset I've been again and again repeating. Militants can be killed. The mindset and their ideology, the people of Kashmir themselves have to step out and ensure, because the political leaders are saying that these are not Kashmiris who are doing. If they are not Kashmiris who are doing, it's all the more easier to do. And at any point of time, Pakistan has an agenda. Pakistan is using terrorism as an instrument of state policy. Where should anybody have doubt? Political solutions come with the people of Kashmir. You don't involve Pakistan and China. Kind of political languages that are spoken from Kashmir themselves are utterly surprising. It is amazing how people can argue on issues. If the Kashmiri feels that he is part and parcel, emotionally attached, why not? All these abrogations and everything have resulted in the funds going to the people.
Okay,
People are
Amit Raina, quickly respond before I bring in Syed Zafar Islam for his closing comment.
I have two rebuttals. One is for Syed Zafar Islam. It is sad that the government measures state of affairs in Jammu and Kashmir, especially in Kashmir Valley, with number of tourists. The state of measurement is not on the return of Kashmiri Pandits, how many they have been able to rehabilitate, and whether Kashmiri Pandits have gone back. Now look at the language Ifra Jan has been using, saying that they have rubbed the nerves of Kashmiris on the ground. A party which has been threatening India and Indians before abrogation of Article 370 only sheds crocodile tears when it comes to the killing of non-Muslims, pro-Indian Muslims and Kashmiri Pandits in Kashmir. They only condemn the killing. They do not have guts to get up and name and shame the terror organization, name and shame Pakistan. The praises she was having about Mirwais, the same Mirwais who has fatwas on what women should wear, what people should eat, whether children or girls can play music or not, does not today issue
the
a fatwa
fair
on
point
the
you
innocent
raise,
killing of
fair
Jammu
point
and
you
Kashmir.
raise, number of tourists coming to Kashmir should not be the yardstick. Kashmiri Hindus returning to Kashmir perhaps should be a yardstick. Syed Zafar Islam, please respond.
Gaurav, see, I was talking to or giving reference to the number of tourists in a certain context, that tourists will not visit unless there is a sense of normalcy and sense of security they have. In no way I have mentioned or I have advocated that this should be the only parameter to judge the normalcy, whether the normalcy has returned or the situation has improved. There are many pundits who had recently visited to
Congress
their ancestral
says
home.
you have your head buried in sand. Congress is saying you have your head buried in sand. You don't know the gravity of the problem. The solution is political and not blaming Pakistan.
No, it's the Congress which is the party responsible for the conflict in Kashmir. They are the one who are sleeping. They were the one who actually ignored this problem all
Mr.
along.
Zafar Islam.
But the issue is right in front of us. The experts have spoken about it, and their take is very different than the political representatives who are speaking.
Okay.
All I'm saying that there is an issue in Kashmir.
Sir, there is an issue which needs to be sorted out, and Pakistan needs to be made irrelevant. Pakistan needs to be made irrelevant in Jammu and Kashmir, except for Pakistan-occupied Kashmir. I've run out of time on this part of the show, but do remember, as Sushant Sareen and Jal Kulkarni have warned, that the worst is yet to come. So days, weeks, months ahead could be extremely troublesome in Jammu and Kashmir, and we cannot let the terrorists have the initiative or the upper hand at all times. We'll track that story very closely.